children under the age of 10 now account for 22% of online porn consumption for kids younger than 18.
It's a rise in the number of kids committing sexual assaults on other kids.
That's why nurses say porn is playing a factor.
Is kids are recreating what they see.
Children are actually videoing themselves engaging in sexual activity and uploading it. Anything you can imagine is available with one click of a button,
The FBI estimates there are 750,000 child predators online.
So what we have is a public health crisis.
One expert warns that a culture of denial is leaving children at risk. One expert warns that a culture of denial is leaving children at risk. One expert warns that a culture of denial...
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon.
This is such a shit film to make, eh?
As a child, if you were watching that.
Such a brutal topic. So I guess the first question is, who the hell would want to make a documentary about the effects of kids watching porn? Great question. And if you'd asked us a couple of years ago, we would never have thought the answer would be us. We're just a couple of parents of a blended family.
You just farted in my bowl.
We're not religious, nor do we sleep with the moral right. And the only agenda we have is helping parents keep their kids safe online. This all started because, as most parents can relate, our kids started bombarding us with requests for smartphones and tablets and gaming consoles. So we decided to do some research on the pros and cons, and what we discovered was something far more horrifying than we ever could have imagined. Story after story of the impact of children watching and mimicking violent, degrading, hardcore genres of free porn. Story after story of young girls sneaking out to meet middle-aged men, thinking they were about to finally meet the 14-year-old boy they'd been talking online to. We wondered what was out there to protect kids, and so we asked around.
It seemed there were very few people who had protection on their kids' devices, and a lot of confusion around all the different filtering software, and no one seemed to be able to agree on who was meant to be protecting them. We were left feeling overwhelmed, and we knew we weren't the only parents feeling this way. We wanted to know how bad the situation actually is, and even more, we just wanted to find basic practical solutions to keep our kids safe online. So we decided to take matters into our own hands, to help ourselves, and to put us in a position to help other parents. We got in touch with some of the world's leading experts in this field, and we hit the road.
What we've seen in educating parents and educating youth is that many parents today don't actually know what pornography is today. When we think about someone who has an issue with pornography, we think of like the creepy old man who lives in their mom's basement and is like, right? We go from like, either you don't have an issue with it or you're that guy. And that's not the case.
So 6 years old, he accidentally stumbles onto pornography. He said, please tell adults this. He said, the pornography that we see as kids at the first time, it's not just some pictures. He said, the first thing I stumbled onto when I was 6 years old was of a video hurting a woman.
This generation is dealing with this issue to an intensity and scale that no other generation in the history of the world has ever dealt with before.
So just how did we get from a Playboy to a 6-year-old watching assault porn? So just how far has porn come in the last 30 years? Well, 30 odd years ago, porn was pretty hard to come by, unless your dad had a stash under his bed or owned a corner store. Yes, many a young curious lad and laddess found themselves loitering at the photography and art section of the local library, just waiting for their chance to sneak a cheeky wee peek at some skin on paper. Many a young boy would enjoy the odd trip with his father to the local mechanic or tire shop just to get a glance of a boob or two from the centerfold stuck on the wall. Yes, porn was rare and hard to come by, and the stuff one could find was pretty vanilla. In fact, most adolescents suffered a porn-free home. And to rent a dirty movie, one would have to wait until they were at least 18 years old, and when you did, it was embarrassing. I mean, the lady behind the counter was probably the girl you'd gone to school with. What, this is porn? Oh really? I had no idea I found this in the kids section. Sometimes it was just much easier to drive out of town to a non-local store and be embarrassed in front of a total stranger instead. Porn in the 1990s on the internet. We all knew it was there, the porn, spam, emails and pop-ups that never stopped popping up, and the dial-up so slow I may die before I actually see porn internet. But then in 2007, something magical happened in the world of internet porn that changed the game forever. Number one, porn sites started following the YouTube model and began posting all the porn videos of the world for free on their sites. And two, the iPhone was born. So now the human race had all the porn we wanted for free and right in our pockets whenever we felt the urge. And with the internet providers gradually introducing affordable, unlimited, high-speed internet packages, well, the stage was set for a whole lot of non-constructive time. Yes, gone were the days when one could be charged $74 for downloading 2 pictures of centerfolds onto a flip phone. But things really started to snowball when a year later the new iPhone was released, and rather than throwing away a perfectly good used one, we just handed it to our kids because, well, we clearly somewhat forgot just how inquisitive and curious these little creatures can be. And on it continued until nearly every kid in the land seemed to have one. And now we are faced with the itty-bitty little problem of the big 3 A's. Accessibility, anonymity, and affordability. Accessibility. For this generation of kids, porn is now available 24/7 on any number of their devices. Think about sex? Type sex into device. Watch porn. No proof of age needed. It's anonymous. Yes, they no longer need suffer the embarrassment of sneaking into the library just to see a pair of boobs or a willy. And it's affordable because it's free.
The smartphone's been dramatically important in all of this. Pornography's old, but the online, always connected, ubiquitous free Wi-Fi world, unlimited data world and smartphone world, to me is what's created an issue that's new, and that ferocious competition for your sort of cell phone real estate that Facebook and Google and the pornography industry and YouTube and everybody, they all want to be on your screen and they want your screen time. That's their business model.
When our kids get those devices and they're online and they're engaging with activities, they're falling into a pattern of what we as adults have created, what we call socially acceptable addictions. We've become addicted to our phones. We've become addicted to the gaming industry. We've become addicted to pornography. And all what we've done is we've created this vicious cocktail that our kids just plug into because as adults, we're kind of grappling with it on our own. Technology is not the enemy. Technology, however, creates tremendous complexities in the lives of our kids when it is unmonitored and unsupervised by adults.
This is the generation that has questions and searches the answers to those questions on the internet.
So there was the family crashed out on the couch on a summer's day under the oak tree, when out of nowhere, a couple of ladybirds just started at it. Now my 9-year-old son is bug crazy. I mean, bug this and bug that, so of course his curiosity kicks in, and he's relentlessly wanting to learn about the ladybug life cycle. And so we Google it because the internet is an amazing place when one is curious. And in fact, we've taught an entire generation to just jump online when one has a question. It's brilliant. But what happens when that curiosity about bugs fully blooms into the curiosity about sex? And they type sex into Google.
So some parents believe the myth that because their kids are good and they're good parents and they raise their children in a good family, strong family, that their children will be just naturally immune to pornography. And that is not true. Pornography is an equal opportunity offender, and pornography can affect and pull children in from the best family situations to the worst family situations. Children are biologically wired to be interested in nudity.
First time exposure for me was with my teammates. We were at a sleepover at the age of 9. And of course, as a little kid, like that's an amazing experience. Like it's like, oh, this is the best thing ever.
So kids search for porn and continue to look at it. They don't want to be that kid that doesn't know, right? They are wired to figure out their world, to learn how to be adults. And learning about sex is one of those things.
Last year in New Zealand, these headlines shook the country. With a population of only 4 million, and with only 800,000 kids of school age, 300,000 searches for porn blocked per month paints a pretty bleak but honest picture. But it's not just us. It is the World Wide Web after all, and all around the world we have the same access, devices, and curious kids. Pornhub, one of the world's biggest free porn sites, releases its viewership stats every year. See that big bump there between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m? Schools do a pretty good job at blocking harmful content, but 2 out of 3 of us parents do not protect our kids online.
Anyone can go get on the porn site, no matter how old you are. There's no age verification process in place.
Children are going to be exposed to so much material. Parents don't think that they're going to see this or that. A parent needs to assume that their child is going to see pretty much everything that's available on the internet, and to help the child to know how to manage and deal with those things, because those little brains are not prepared to deal with all of that information.
And I was just on a free game site, just playing video games one day by myself, and boom, popped up. And this is right, I shouldn't be seeing this, this is a wrong thing. But then also, you're right, being excited and aroused and not, that age, just having nowhere to put that. No context in order to put what I just saw in.
You can see a 2-year-old right now walking around with the iPad, and they know how to navigate that dang thing. And they're going to get exposed.
They're going to have accidental exposure to it.
Right.
And children share. Back in the day, I found a Playboy magazine. And guess what? I showed it to my little sister. I didn't think, I shouldn't show it to her. No, this is something new. This is something different. Oh my gosh. And so I showed it to her. And that's what kids are doing. They're finding pornography and they're showing it to each other.
I was exactly the same when I found my first porn mag. I took it home and I showed my brother, who was 7. When kids find something new, fun, or dangerous, they want to share it with their friends, whether it be an electric fence or a cute, spiny little bundle of germs. The more dangerous, the more growing up, the more taboo, the better. So we can have filters at home and on their devices, but their friends might not. And so they go to school and they go on the bus and they are seeing what's been shared. It doesn't make any of them bad kids, it just makes them kids. So what happens when our curious little kids become older, curious teens?
Suddenly knowing that there is this totally ubiquitous, anytime, anywhere information source, put that alongside a bunch of adolescents who desperately want to know what sexuality is, how one expresses it, how one performs sexual acts, what's expected of you, how we please other people. They want to know what the world's going to be like, and they want to have a sense of how they can participate in it.
With all this curiosity and access, just how is this exposure affecting our kids? We figured the best place to start was to ask those who were exposed when the internet first came into our homes in the 90s. These guys' stories serve as a bleak warning, as they were at the very beginning of this epidemic, when the internet was still slow and access harder to come by.
It's like there's this giant feast that life has for all of us. And the food's delicious. It's the best food you can imagine. And when I eat the food, although intellectually I know what it is, I don't taste anything. And that's what pornography does. On the outside, yeah, all the emotions are the same. If you knew me now and knew me as a full-blown addict, a lot of people on the outside wouldn't know a difference. When my daughter was born, I was in full-blown addict mode. And the beauty of that moment of having a child, right? Your child, this isn't someone else's kid, this is your kid. I was numbed out. That's the food, right? That I couldn't taste, that moment. Fast forward 3 years when my son was born, I was much more present. And the stark experience between the birth of my two children tells me at least what addiction costs.
The reality is, Stephen's story is not an unfamiliar one. And what makes these stories worse is that we couldn't find any involving arousal addiction that hadn't involved online childhood exposure.
When that internet came, it was a tsunami of into our office of people wanting to help.
Some kids will see it at first and then go, oh, that's gross, I don't want to see that anymore. But others are curious, they want to experiment, so they try a few more things, they hear about other sites that have other material, and then they move into more of a habitual pattern.
When we started the treatment, it was accidental exposure. These kids were not looking for pornography. And so we saw younger and younger, and it was 7 years old and 5 years old, and it keeps getting younger and younger.
We've received emails from 7-year-olds asking for help because they don't feel like they have someone in their life who they can talk to about this issue, because no one's ever talked to them about this issue.
Mine didn't become a problem until internet landed in my pocket, like in 2007. I was still seeking it out as much as I could, but all of a sudden I have endless novelty in my pocket, you know? And so from there, that concept of more often and a more hardcore version came into play for me.
Basically what we're seeing is that people who develop a compulsivity or an addiction to online pornography, it releases certain chemicals in the brain similar to other forms of addiction. And in order to get the same high, the same level of arousal that they used to get, they have to be exposed to more novel or extreme imagery. And so before you know it, they're describing situations where they start to view things that historically they never would have viewed.
The problem is these are arousal addictions. Drug addiction, you simply want more. Arousal addiction, you want different. Drugs, you want more of the same, different. So you need the novelty, you need the arousal, you need to be sustained.
I noticed myself becoming desensitized to pornography, that I would have to seek out this perfect, what I thought was some perfect scene to get aroused. But I started to find myself running into pornography that was degrading, and that was aggressive, and that was violent. And it made me feel a little bit ill, like disgusted of like, whoa, I can't believe that type of genre is happening. I can't believe this. And then I noticed after a while that I got desensitized to that. Someone's getting abused, I just skimmed over it to get to my perfect scene, you know? And so that started to create some guilt for me, because I grew up in a house that taught that it's important to be respectful to people, to treat other individuals with consideration, and I didn't see that in that pornography. And so it created some guilt in me of like, oh shoot, maybe I shouldn't be going down these internet searches, because the person on the other side of the screen is a person.
And so oxytocin, the bonding chemical, that's the chemical that mothers have with babies during birth and during nursing. And so it's that bonding hormone. When someone is looking at the pornography and they act out sexually, like with masturbation, there is a release of oxytocin at that point. So during sexual activity, oxytocin is released. And now they're bonding to actually a virtual mistress, like the computer. There's a feeling there. It's subconscious. They don't know they're bonding to that. But it's a feeling of soothing and being taken care of, and I'm okay.
And maybe they're feeling kind of lonely, or they're feeling some disconnection from mom and dad, or they're just feeling the stresses of schoolwork. And they find something here that can help them escape just for a few moments and feel better about themselves, maybe because they're now not having to deal with the stresses that they've been struggling with. And so they try it more and more. They find that it helps them to manage because it's activating those neural pathways or neurotransmitters in the brain that help them to maybe be calmed. They're able to escape for a few moments. And then they become dependent upon it, much like another adolescent maybe turns to marijuana or alcohol or drugs, because they're wanting to also manage life. And now, though, they've become dependent upon it. They see it as a crutch, a way to manage things.
When I felt sad or lonely or depressed or anxiety, it was like jump to pornography as my escapism. And that escapism, it happened compulsively and chronically. That's an addiction. If escapism happens compulsively and chronically, it's an addiction. And so I was fighting an addiction to pornography. For me, it affected my confidence in myself. It increased my isolation, decreased connection.
Something else that was hard to hear when we learned about more and more of these stories was how truly awful these men felt every time they didn't succeed in their efforts to stop compulsively viewing porn, efforts which for some had been going on for many years. This issue is not just affecting males. Young girls are also falling into the same pattern.
Because almost every single person I've ever talked to who has struggled with porn, it's like a drug. There's an immediate feel-good effect that then leads to an absolute down.
In addition to the numbing and isolation that compulsive viewing of online porn from a young age is causing, we discovered the physical effects that many young guys are facing, namely PIED, or porn-induced erectile dysfunction. As we dug deeper, it turned out that this wasn't just some small group of shy guys who had performance anxiety, but something so much bigger. In fact, so big that it's affecting up to 1 in 3 teens and young men. So while we were in the States, we caught up with Gabe Deem and Noah Church, both recovered porn addicts who now help other young men claim back their sexuality. They have coaching, forums, books, appeared in Time magazine's cover story on porn, as well as speaking on Capitol Hill and Chelsea Handler's Netflix special.
I was told that porn would be sex positive, and it ended up being completely sex negative because it gave me a limp noodle And I don't think it gets any more sex negative than that. Traditionally, in the sex addiction community, addicts were looked at as people with underlying issues or maybe pre-existing abuse and trauma that drove their compulsive behavior. But therapists started noticing a new type of addict, an opportunity addict, that's a part of this digital native generation that was born into a world with unlimited access to porn. And they didn't have problems that drove them to porn use. They had unlimited access to porn and chronically consumed it that led to problems. I was first exposed to porn at 8, but things got really bad when I was 12, and that's when my family got high-speed internet. As soon as that happened, I was around 7th grade. I'd ride my bike home from school, and I would sometimes watch porn for a couple hours before my parents got home.
My name is Noah Church.
Looking back, I have no cherished memories of watching porn.
Back in the 90s, when I was growing up, I was among the first generation for whom it was common to have a computer in the household and an internet connection. At about age 9, I had the bright idea to search online for pictures of women, pretty women. And I found that, and I found a lot more that I wasn't expecting and had never imagined as well.
This was a normal part of teen culture. My friends and I at school would pass pieces of paper back and forth and give each other tips and tricks of how we could hide it from our parents.
And I was seeing the hardest of the hardcore content by the time I was 11, 12 years old.
By the time I was out of middle school, I had seen just about every genre of porn that you can imagine.
If I wanted to see a picture of a naked lady, I had to go hang out at the magazine rack at the drugstore and sneak a peek. And so I was a little envious of Noah's situation with the media and the technology, and intentionally did not intervene. Now, had there been signs of issues, I certainly would have, but he got straight A's, graduated first out of 800 or so kids in his graduating class. We went to all the parent-teacher conferences.
I loved Larry's honesty here. From the time we spent with him, he came across as a loving father who wanted the best for his son, but who had been caught off guard 20 years ago when porn on the internet was new and novel. I think he captured perfectly what many of us dads think about our sons watching porn, that it's normal and natural to seek it out, which of course it totally is. And man, you boys are lucky. You should have seen what we had to use when we were kids. And here lies the problem. That because porn didn't do most of us any recognizable harm when we were kids, that it won't hurt our kids now. But the porn of yesteryear and its availability is kind of like comparing a popsicle to Mount Everest. And we need to start seeing the belief that porn never did me any harm when I was a kid for what it really is. Outdated, redundant bullshit that is leaving our kids drowning in an online world that is wiring their brains for pixels and endless novelty rather than connection.
And the first time I really realized that something could be wrong with me and with my sexuality was when I was 18. And I was with my girlfriend at the time, my first serious relationship. And this has been something I'd been looking forward to my entire life. I never had any doubt that this is what I wanted. But when we were together there in a bed, naked, my body just didn't respond.
I became sexually active also at age 14, and that was when the battle of my libido began. The battle of my sex drive for real-life partners and my sex drive for my laptop or my PSP or my smartphone.
Yeah, well, Noah, I made the conscious decision not to give you mine because I knew you had much higher octane entertainment. So if you ever want them, did you ever stumble across my box of Playboys underneath the...
No, I didn't have that experience.
I was 23. I was in love. For months, I was trying to function with someone that I loved. I was trying to have sex with my girlfriend, and every time we tried, I failed. And I was just completely broken. She thought it was because she wasn't attractive enough. I tried my best to explain that I thought she was the most beautiful person in the world. But how do you make sense of that when you don't even know what's wrong with you?
I realized I needed more and more extreme content or specific content to feel excited, to feel aroused. And that was why when I finally had a real naked woman who I was in love with in front of me, she wasn't enough to incite that experience of excitement and arousal, even though consciously that was all that I wanted all along.
If you make it to 90 days porn free, you get a free 12-pack. I saw bukkake videos where you would have 50 guys ejaculate on a woman's face when I was like 12. And my parents had no clue that I was doing that.
I was going to ask, where were your parents? What were they doing?
Well, sometimes, later on when in high school, when I had my own laptop, I would watch it in my bedroom. They thought I was doing homework or something, you know. They had no idea that that was something that I would be doing. They were completely blindsided by it.
Out of all the interviews we did in the USA, the interviews about compulsive viewing of porn were the ones that emotionally blindsided me. During our trip, we had met with quite a few guys who had struggled with porn addiction, and perhaps because I'm a woman, I never really grasped the depth of this issue, not even when we did our initial research. It wasn't until I came face to face with these men, until I spent time in their company and listened, not just on but also off camera, about the true cost of their early online exposure. These were good men, good human beings, loving and kind human beings, swept up at a young age into a world that no one had prepared them for. Secrets, lies, confusion, self-loathing, feeling unworthy of love yet scared of being abandoned by their loved ones. Numbness to everyday joy we all wish our children to feel, and instead a dark ache of loneliness, depression and thoughts of suicide. Years after they've come through the other side, seeing the pain in their eyes of the hurt that they felt, not just for how they'd been affected, but also the pain they carried about how others had been hurt as a result of their actions. As a human, it's hard not to feel deeply being so intimate with another's pain. As a mother, it's even harder to think of anyone's child going through this when it can be so easily prevented.
We needed to find out more about how our kids are being affected by unfiltered, unsupervised access online. We'd heard horror stories about naked selfies being shared amongst groups of school kids, dick pics being randomly sent via social media apps to girls, adolescents and young adults not properly understanding boundaries and consent, teen girls turning up at GP clinics or at A&E with vaginal and anal damage, and a growing number of young guys being charged for choking sexual partners. We began to understand more about the links between all of these things and the increase in desensitization to violent, degrading genres of porn. And we discovered many harmful and distorted narratives being formed by our kids around the meaning of healthy sexuality.
We have got to take ownership and responsibility because we are about to lose an entire generation to the harms of pornography because our kids are learning their sexual behavior through pornography, and pornography is a lousy teacher.
A thing that struck me is how normalized pornography is. That, you know, people might say, show each other or bring groups in to watch, or that kids will be looking at it in class. That notion of a stigma has disappeared. The industry's done a fantastic job at normalizing itself. And at some point, something that's everywhere, and nobody seems to be saying anything about it, the adults aren't saying anything about it, then kids just assume, oh, it must be okay.
So we've talked to over 36,000 kids, and we give surveys at the end, and right now about 78% of those 36,000 kids say that they're engaged with pornography at some level.
Russ's statistics didn't really surprise us, and one of the things we hadn't really considered until we started making this documentary was how easily our hypersexualized world has infiltrated the world of our children. If you think about it, apps are the main way our kids are communicating with each other these days, but it's also the way they're presenting themselves to the world, particularly many of our girls. They're taking their cues on how to dress and how to behave from reality TV shows like Love Island or Jersey Shore, from the hypersexualized music videos that would have been considered soft porn back in our day, and from the influencers whose greatest achievement seems to be the amount of likes, shares and comments on yet another porn-esque pose. None of these are teaching our girls a healthy narrative on what it means to be female.
You know, one of the most uploaded images on Snapchat and on Instagram are selfies, right? Just think for a moment. Do you remember when you used to take pictures of other people? Today, we are basically developing our young girls into narcissistic voyeurs of their own bodies.
This is their societal norm. A norm for our girls who want to be accepted, feel beautiful, and who want to be loved. Add into the mix a generation who are so used to life being lived through a lens, it's hardly surprising that naked selfies are now considered a cultural norm. What was surprising, though, was that this starts around 9 or 10 years old, with the majority of it happening in middle school.
Tragically, for teenagers and tweens, sexting is the new flirting. This is how I get your attention. The growth is amongst girls actually initiating the hot pics or the naked pictures or the sexting to boys.
Girls feel accepted, beautiful and loved. What they don't see, because they're just kids, is that they're putting themselves in a position to be viewed as nothing more than a piece of meat instead of as a human being. When our boys have been left unsupervised to be conditioned to porn, see our girls dressing and behaving in this way, it serves only to confirm the "she must be up for it, consent not required, respect not required" porn narrative. And when they do pay our girls attention, it confirms to the girls that what they're doing is working. Of course, we also knew that there's an increasing number of girls compulsively viewing porn, so they're all being conditioned to that same narrative, which is setting the precedent for how to act during and what to expect from a sexual encounter. This is based on a heterosexual relationship. However, porn conditioning, regardless of sexual orientation, is resulting in boys and girls completely missing each other when it comes to their first sexual encounter, instead of experiencing connection and healthy sexuality.
And then if this becomes the way that our children are educated about their sexuality, then it's normal for us to expect them to start to act like porn stars when they are interacting with other kids.
Many young women are finding themselves in a scenario where their first sexual encounter is with anal sex. They don't particularly enjoy it, or it is painful for them, but they think that's what's expected of them, and they think that's how it's supposed to be. So they accept that, well, maybe sex isn't pleasurable, maybe sex isn't meant to be enjoyable, maybe sex is supposed to hurt. And that's not to say that there aren't people who do enjoy different types of sex, but for someone's first sexual encounter to be that, kind of going from 0 to 100 without knowing, how it should work, it can lead to physical damage, it can lead to emotional damage. Of course, with this issue, men and women can both be victims and are both victims.
There was a study that came out that showed that of teenage boys, ages 14 to 18, who had been exposed to pornography, 1 in 6 had either choked their partner or ejaculated on her face.
Back home, we'd taken to the streets to interview different groups of people, including teens, about the current sexual climate. Choking and ejaculating on a girl's face was something that we asked about.
So I read a statistic the other day that said 1 in 6 young men have either choked their partner or come on her face. Does this?
Oh, I've done both.
Is this something that's normal in the culture today?
Yeah, it's so normal. It's not normal if you don't do it.
Yeah. And where do you think young men are learning this behavior from?
Pornhub!
This particular interview hit me really hard, and for 2 days I couldn't go anywhere near the documentary because the girl who raised her hand and said she'd done both did so before we even managed to get the full question out. A very pretty teenage girl who admitted this to us with what seemed to be an air of pride. All I could think about in that moment is that I'm a mum, that I have a daughter and a stepdaughter, and here was this gorgeous girl in front of me who, because of the culture around her, had normalised what the majority of us adults would consider degrading. I walked away from those teens that day filled with a heavy burden that we've dropped the ball, and that our kids like this girl could so easily end up continuing allowing themselves to engage in sexually degrading and abusive acts, not even realising that's what's happening to them, that this would be their story.
The level of violence in pornography today has normalized that violence. So what we should recognize as being abnormal is no longer recognized by young adults as abnormal.
There's just almost this level of normalization around sexual violence with teenagers. And so they're not telling us what's happening, but we are seeing just this extreme level of violence between them. So it's strangulation, gagging, really violent rectal assaults, things that mirror popular genres of violent pornography.
And what's happening is then literally in their brains, it's almost like the brain is being rewired, and it's causing good kids to do horrific things.
When you think of the average 11-year-old boy or 9-year-old, this is his first introduction to sex. And porn is sex education for boys all over the world and some girls. He's got no repertoire of experience, right? He cannot pull from his 9, 10, 11-year-old brain an argument, my girlfriend, wife, whatever, doesn't like that. This for him carries a level of reality that it probably wouldn't do for older men who have some experience with having sex with women. And we're talking about heterosexual porn here. So he's going to believe this in a way that he wouldn't if he was older. When you see the male porn performers act this out, they have no capacity for empathy. So here you have a woman choking, she can't breathe, and his face is completely stoic, ramming his penis down her throat to the point sometimes that she vomits. And then what is this 11-year-old boy meant to think about what is sex? Another standard sex act is ATM, ass to mouth, which is where the penis goes into her anus and then into her mouth without washing, hair pulling, spitting. So your average porn that this boy puts porn into Google or into Pornhub or wherever he gets it from, he thinks at 11 he's going to see breasts, if he's lucky, or maybe a vagina, or maybe a couple having sex. Not for 1 second is he thinking he's going to be catapulted into a world where one woman is being penetrated orally, vaginally, and anally by 3 men who are calling her a bitch, a whore, spitting into her face, pulling her hair, and then ejaculating all over. Now I ask you, think about this 11-year-old boy. Because he went to porn because, he's developmentally interested in sex. This is perfectly normal developmentally. 30-odd years of empirical evidence that shows that the younger boys get to porn and the more hardcore porn they watch, the more likely they are to sexually aggress against girls and women. Do we really want this as the major narrative of our culture? Because when you take away the capacity for empathy and love and relationship building and connection, what are you left with? Really, what are you left with?
there appears to be an increase in the number of children who are abusing other children sexually that are showing up in child abuse centers, and that during the interview of the children to find out what the background was behind the peer abuse, that there had been in recent years a significant increase that involved an exposure of the child perpetrator to pornography online.
I took care of a teenage girl who was sexually assaulted at school in a bathroom, and another boy came in. Instead of helping her, he filmed the sexual assault. And then after this one boy was done, he told the girl, "If you don't give me a blowjob, I'm gonna show this to everyone at school." My name is Heidi Olson, and I'm a sexual assault nurse examiner. So I became a SANE nurse about 4 years ago, and nobody prepared me for what I was about to see in terms of the age of perpetrators. So I, in my mind, just sort of had this stereotypical assumption that perpetrators would be these creepy men in their 60s who lived in their parents' basement still and, lured kids down there with lollipops and kittens or, whatever, sort of this stereotype that's not necessarily true. And what I realized is we have to document our perpetrator's age on different forms if we know their age. What I'm writing down exam after exam is 12, 13, 11, just over and over. And I just felt this burden of what is happening, that so many children are sexually assaulting other children. Nobody is talking about this. Nobody trained me for this. Like, what on earth is happening? So what I realized as I got into the data, starting in 2015, our biggest age range of perpetrators were 11 to 15-year-olds. In 2018, we had our highest number of sexual assault victims we'd ever seen. We treated about 450 kids that year, and 44% of our perpetrators were minors. 44, just mind-blowing. So we started asking questions about a year ago about pornography. Anything related to pornography that we could gather data on, we started. Of course, sometimes we don't know. It's impossible to know what happened. Say it's a 2-year-old who can't really disclose those things. We may not have an answer. The first time I really connected the dots with all of this, I saw a little girl, and she had been sexually abused by her 12-year-old brother. And the dad walked in and saw it happening. So there was no question about anything. Clearly, it was very violating and awful. And the parents later told me as they're crying and, this horrific thing has happened in their family, they were like, well, we have found violent pornography on his phone. And of course, in my mind, it just clicked. Like, that makes perfect sense. So this 12-year-old boy is failing out of school. He has all these symptoms of depression. He's unmotivated to do anything. Now he's sexually abusing his sister, and really all of it can be traced back to this pornography they found on his phone. They did not address that, and so this behavior escalates. And that floored me. I just felt like, why are we not having a conversation about this? So historically, we were always taught if a child's sexually acting out in harmful ways, it's because they were sexually assaulted. And that was the assumption everybody made and sort of the theory that everyone went off of. But it's changing because you can also watch sexual violence constantly. You don't have to have ever been touched or perpetrated on, but your mind is being filled with these images of sexual violence, and kids imitate. We know they do. They say things adults say, they try things adults do. They're gonna act out that pornography that they're watching. So yes, some kids have been sexually abused, or they've grown up with trauma, or they have attachment disorders. They're exposed to pornography. They act out sexual violence. But there are kids who only have been exposed to pornography, and they're sexually acting that out in really violent ways. So that's really, really concerning because almost every child has access to violent pornography. So it almost just feels like this tsunami that's coming of the amount of children who are going to think sexual violence is normal and then do that towards another child.
Boys' testosterone levels skyrocket between 900 and 1,000% from the ages of 10 to 14, right where Heidi and other professionals around the globe are seeing the massive increase in assault. It's the worst possible time to give them unfiltered access to the internet, and it's the exact time that most of us do. We used to take all that energy out on each other by mimicking superstars of wrestling, the odd broken bone.
perpetrator definitely isn't the right word for them. It's too strong of a word for an 11-year-old who has never been talked to about sex, who accidentally stumbles on pornography while he's doing homework and then falls into this just rabbit hole that the porn industry has created. He's a victim of our culture and of this crazy fast-changing technology, and adults not stepping in to say, hey, I want to protect you from this. So yes, his actions are horrific. They are traumatic to the child he has sexually assaulted, but he also has been traumatized by the images and the things that he has been exposed to. And when I tell parents, was there pornography found on the perpetrator's phone, say it was their son, I don't know, we haven't looked. That type of response is really scary. They're completely unaware of what's going on. If kids have access to some type of device where they're gonna see pornography and repeatedly be able to view that and have that absorb their thoughts and their actions, start to influence their actions, it's gonna happen. It doesn't matter what kind of family they're coming from. We had a mom bring in her 10-year-old daughter for a forensic exam. And the mom had witnessed this 10-year-old and appear in a sex act together. The mom, of course, was super concerned, set them down on the couch and was like, what's going on? And they told her, we've had sex. And they told her we've watched pornography together. So again, seeing this direct correlation between pornography, then acting it out, this is normalized behavior. No one is safe unless parents are taking active steps to protect their kids and have these hard conversations. And a lot of people are either unaware or they don't want to go there, unfortunately.
The time spent with Heidi was some of the hardest of the whole film, because she is right on the front line every day seeing the effects of our ignorance and naivety as parents. Giving our kids smartphones to keep them safe now seems like a walking contradiction. We need to wake up, as parents. If we keep going the way we are, our kids just don't stand a chance. And it's not just what they're seeing online, but who is seeing them.
There are predators on the outside looking in that see everything our kids are doing online.
She started saying to me, hey, send me a picture of you. And so I did.
And once the first picture is sent, they use it to extort more graphically explicit images.
TikTok now has a predator problem.
But what about the Xbox, the Wii, or the PlayStation 2? The FBI estimates there are 750,000 child predators online.
Experts say virtual worlds are becoming playgrounds where predators can easily blend in.
To lure and groom minors for sex.
Along our journey, we've spoken to many parents as to whether they monitor their kids' online gaming and social media, and the overwhelming response has been that they don't want to invade their kids' privacy. A couple of years ago, I probably wouldn't have thought anything of it, but our time spent with Russ Tuttle and then the detectives of the Covert Online Investigation Unit painted a picture of just how vulnerable our kids are.
Okay, let's even say that you feel like you're invading their privacy. If you don't invade their privacy, I promise you a predator will. You choose.
The biggest change we've seen, or one of the biggest changes, is the huge increase in social media applications that children can access, because the reality is any application that we use to communicate, the online groomers will be using those as well. Some of them are quite prepared to play the long game.
Where do you go to school? Well, I go to school here. Oh, that's cool. I know where that school's at. That kid has no clue who they're really talking to.
Others will basically do a shotgun approach and hit up 10, 15 children, send me a photo, send me a photo. And if 1 in 10 or 1 in 20 send them a photo, well, they're happy with that because the effort's been worth the while, but they'll just quickly move on to another child if they don't get what they want. Children are putting themselves at risk by going on live streaming sites where they can sing songs or whatever, but they can also be abused in real time as well.
You know how there's all these influencers online now and they're following them on Instagram, so they will take over or they'll create a fake account as an influencer start talking to somebody and then say, oh, I think that you're so talented and I want to guide you through this process, but I think that you need to do some modelling for me. If you just send me some pictures through and we'll do like a talent show. And then it becomes, okay, can you do it in a swimsuit? Okay, can you do it with your bottoms removed? Can you turn around? Can you bend over? We dealt with a case, and I think the youngest child was a little girl on there, and she was about 6, and she was told to do sexual things to herself, and she did do that. She didn't realise they were sexual, but she was just following instructions as an adult was telling her to do, because she thought that was going to get her a place in a dance academy or whatever it was that she was auditioning for. Online gaming is another thing that we've seen increase recently. Children will go online and that's their world, it's gaming. They'll get home from school or on the weekend and they want to do hours and hours of gaming, especially when they're doing kind of the live gaming where they're playing amongst others that they don't know, and somebody that wants to try and get something from that child could offer them tokens or gaming credit in exchange for images of themselves. I mean, we had quite a large case last year. This person that was targeting the children managed to get images from one boy and then use those images to get more and more from other children within the same area, within the same school. And this was actually an adult man posing as a pretty young girl. She looked like a movie star, didn't she?
Yeah,
like a teenage
pretty standard
movie star.
boy though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Teenage
really
boys, the testosterone is raging in many of them, and an attractive teenager of their same age contacts them, and starts an online communication with them that progresses to a sexual communication. Well, some of them aren't thinking too clearly, unfortunately, and send photos and stuff.
And once one's gone, that's it.
Yeah.
That's well, if you don't give me more, I'm going to tell your mum and dad. If you don't give me more, I'm going to spread these around your school. And so the boys just kept doing more and more and more things. More sexual things, more extreme things.
Initially, they won't report it to a parent or caregiver or even a trusted adult. Certainly won't report it to the police, and it's only when the wheels fall off and things just implode that someone finally finds out, and then we can take some action. But yeah, by then the damage has often been done.
Our kids no longer roam the streets as we once did, out of fear of predators lurking around local parks and driving the streets in vans looking for kids. No, we keep our kids locked away safe inside, on their devices, online, talking to strangers, predators, perfectly camouflaged as a friend and confidant, and then sometimes not. Sometimes just openly soliciting nudes and sex from children like they were ordering breakfast at a cafe. The makers of Bark, one of the apps we found who tirelessly work hard to protect our kids online, recently posted a video that was brutally hard to watch. It confirmed everything that the detectives John and Hannah had told us. One of their team posed as both a 15-year-old and 11-year-old girl on Instagram in an effort to show us parents the world our kids are living in.
Within the first hour of posting on Libby's accounts, 7 adult men contacted her. By the end of 9 days, that number was 92. The graphics team transformed me into 11-year-old Bailey. Bailey is afraid of the dark. She hasn't had her first crush yet. She's still prepubescent. We launched our 11-year-old persona online.
444 and go. One like from a guy whose profile photo is a penis.
An incoming video call in less than 5 minutes.
I can't see you. Don't be shy.
11-year-old Bailey's persona was approached with an even more disturbing level of manipulation and requests.
So I recently had a young girl, she was really angry with me at the end of an assembly. And I could actually hear the pounding of steps coming down the bleachers. And I knew I was in trouble. Like, this girl, she was angry with me. And she came up to me and she made a point and she put her finger in my face and she said, "Where were you when I was in the 7th grade?" And she's now a 10th grade girl. Everything I just talked about in that school assembly to those kids, she said, "You know what?" She said, "When I was in 7th grade, I had a best friend. We were best friends since kindergarten. And in 7th grade, my friend started pulling away from me and I didn't realize, but she was talking to someone she thought was a peer, same age, but a boy, online through social media, using about 9 different social media apps." She said, "My friend began to get more distant from me." She said she never met him in person throughout her entire 7th grade year, but the summer between 7th and 8th grade, she met this quote-unquote 14-year-old boy in person who turned out to be a 58-year-old male sexual predator. Within the first 5 minutes of meeting her, this girl told me, she said, "He raped my friend. He showed her porn and said, 'Do that.'" A couple weeks into 8th grade, this girl who is standing in front of me has gone from being angry at me, but the anger was, why couldn't I have heard this message when I was in 7th grade? Maybe I could have helped my friend. To despair, to now guilt. Because she said this, she said, "My friend sent me a message a couple weeks into 8th grade. Come over right away, I've got to see you." I made my way to her house, she tells me, and she says, my friend had hung herself and taken her own life in her closet.
During our journey, we needed to find some redemption. We needed to know how we could protect our kids, how we could help other parents protect their kids, and to stop them becoming another statistic, to stop them becoming another story. So we also spent our time finding out about the 4 main ways to keep our kids safer online, educating ourselves to become empowered and face these threats head on, educating our kids to empower them to deal with exposure, putting filters and monitoring apps into effect, and being aware of what our kids are doing when they are spending time online. We need to be proactive in all 4 areas, consistently learning, talking, updating protective technology, and being involved. As well as this film, we created a website, a one-stop hub, where parents can also access a lot of the information we have and continue to learn, including links to the experts' resources, such as books, online parenting courses, and filtering recommendations. When it comes to educating our kids, I think we can all agree, approaching this topic can be very confronting and very uncomfortable. I personally was worried about talking to my daughter, then 9, about this topic, because I was scared her curiosity would lead her to seek out answers herself, or with friends who had unfiltered access to the internet. Kristen was one of the experts I first voiced my concerns about this to. It's something we know other parents are also worried about.
There were a lot of people that were like, "What? Talk to a 7-year-old about pornography?" And I'm like, well, 7-year-olds are on the internet, right? I mean, they're on their devices. And they'd be, yeah, but like, then we have to warn them. Just like you warn a child running out into the street.
Like, we've all been trained as kids. What if I catch on fire? Stop, drop, roll, right? We know that from just being trained on that. What's the stop, drop, roll when you see pornography on the screen? Turn off the monitor, run and get mom, dad, and just leave this place, and they'll come and help fix it.
Something every single expert we spoke to on our journey had told us. It's not a case of if they see it, it's a case of when. So we couldn't do nothing. Just hoping our kids won't be exposed is not an option.
It's important to talk to children earlier about sex so that you can give your version, right? You can teach them your ideals, your values about sex, which are very different than the values, I would think, than the values portrayed in pornography. Sooner is safer. When you begin a conversation with a young child, you're not ruining their innocence. You are simply giving them information that they need to be safe in the world that they live in.
Spending time with Kristen and going through her read-along books, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures and Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Jr., we were really impressed with how easy she's made it for parents to begin that conversation. We love the way she explains the brain science behind the effects of porn to kids, the prompts to help parents, and the ability to create a plan that suits each family. We also discuss with Todd and Dan how kids need to feel comfortable about their bodies, how they need to know and use the correct terminology for body parts right from the get-go, and how that comes from the parents educating them. Kids need to know that you're there for them with this topic.
A parent doesn't create an environment for open discussion, then it creates an environment of shame. The only conclusion they can draw is that they are bad. And that toxic shame then creates that desire to not connect. They pull away, disconnect from mom and dad or from other teachers that could be helping them because they feel ashamed of what they're doing.
They had really hit the nail on the head when they spoke about ensuring that we don't attach shame to their curiosity or any online exposure. Liz Walker, another expert, this time in Australia, who we'd spent a lot of time communicating with, has also authored 2 great books, Millie's Message, Protecting Kids Online, and Hamish and the Shadow Secret. I read Hamish and the Shadow Secret to my daughter and youngest stepson, and what I loved about it was the fact that it labelled the various feelings kids may experience when exposed to porn, and indeed, the violent and degrading genres. Feelings such as biological arousal, something I'd never previously considered happening to a child under 12, and at the same time, having a feeling that something is very wrong with what they're viewing. Had it not been for the things we'd learned, we could have easily found ourselves in a situation where one of our younger kids ended up stumbling on this type of porn, feeling aroused by it and not understanding what it was or what it meant, then not talking to us about it at all, and possibly heading down a really harmful path, having no context for any of it. I feel like this book empowered me as well as them. At the end of the day, we're all human and we all seek real, meaningful, mutual connection, something that porn denies. We adults may know this, but our kids don't, not unless we educate them properly. Of course, it's not just the younger kids that need their parents to step up to the plate on this education.
Speaking to kids all over, they are sinking. When I say to them, has anyone ever helped you navigate your way through this porn culture? They all say no, and we are drowning. We are absolutely drowning.
Speaking to teens, it seemed to be the consensus that if they hadn't been able to have open, balanced, and shame-free conversations with their parents, they felt they had no choice but to seek out answers to their questions online. Desperate for information we're just not giving them, when their brains are going through massive changes at the same time they become ready to start exploring their sexuality further.
So the last part of our brain to develop is our prefrontal cortex. So mom and dad are their prefrontal cortex, basically. No, you can't do that. That's dangerous. Why not? I want to do that, right? And it helps that parents have to be engaged and involved. They need to realize that the frontal cortex is the brake system that can stop a person from doing something that they shouldn't be doing.
Bernard and Anna are 2 amazing high school teachers who really stepped up to the plate. Working with students, they created the play 2 Nights that depicts 2 very different relationships, one of which will be familiar to a lot of us when we were teens, filled with anticipation and fumbling and butterflies. The other, the current norm being modelled for our kids by porn, filled with objectification and harmful narratives.
You want to film me?
Is it alright if I decide but change my mind? Is
This is what people do now, okay? I'm not asking you to do anything unusual. If you have a problem with this, then you have a problem with sex.
If I don't wanna feel obliged in any way.
They've been performing this play in schools here in New Zealand, opening up the floor for discussion with teen audiences afterwards, and it's having a massively positive impact on the boys and girls who watch it. The full play is also on our website. It's our wish that through Bernard and Anna, this play can be presented in schools worldwide.
I think my teen is watching porn, but I don't know how to have or even start that conversation. It was hearing distressed parents voicing these concerns to us that prompted me a few months back to make a couple of animations. Because it is hard to find the right tone and angle to broach these topics with, as we need our kids to come on board with us and not think that we're just some old fuddy-duddies who are trying to ruin their fun. So here's how the conversation may go with our teen son.
So son, I've been meaning to have the porn talk with you for a while now. The what now? The porn talk. Dad, that's really weird. Let me out of the car. Sorry son, we're traveling down the highway at 300 miles per hour, so you're kind of trapped. So I realized I've kind of dropped the ball on this a bit. I didn't really know the full impact of today's high-speed internet porn on the developing brain until recently. You see, when I was a teen, all I had to jerk off to was like your grandma's women's mags and pics of women in swimsuits and stuff, and I think I just threw up in my mouth sometimes a little bit. Lingerie models and her Easy Buy and Sears catalogs. Dad, stop. I feel really ill. You see, the thing is, porn was really hard to come by back in the day, and now it's streamed right into anything that can connect to the internet, and it has me really worried about the impact of that. Okay. You see, until now I thought, yeah, he's probably looking at a bit of porn, but that's normal. And Dad, this is really, really uncomfortable. I know, son. I'm sorry, but this is where I've dropped the ball, because lately I've been seeing headlines and reading articles about a kabullion different porn-related conditions that have developed in young men, including erectile dysfunction. In fact, some studies are showing that up to 1 in 3 young men now have ED, and they either can't get it up with a real girl, or they can't keep it up, or they can't come. And that scares the shit out of me. Dad, that would never happen to me. I know, son, but here's the thing. The chances are really high that it could. And sex is so good, I don't want to screw that up for you. I mean, your mother and I still love to bang away every other Thursday. Dad, she dresses up in a sexy, skimpy little... Whew, kind of got lost in thought there. The other thing is that porn is so far removed from real sex that it's kind of like comparing licking dirt to eating a big, juicy burger. I can see porn and know that there's no way a real woman would actually enjoy like 98.6% of what they're doing. But a young dude with no experience has no point of reference, and so naturally thinks that this is what sex is and this is how you do it. So basically, I just want you to be healthy and be really good at sex. Dad, stop! Stop! And that's learned over years of fumbling around, figuring that stuff out. Not just grabbing a woman and doing whatever you please to her. I'm going to introduce filters to all our home devices and phones because it's my job to protect you and make sure that you're healthy and not the guy who either can't get it up or just does porn to his partner. Dad, I really think you're overreacting. Besides, I don't even watch porn. That's good, son. I just want to make sure I'm doing my job as a dad, and one day your future partner or wife will thank me for it. Dad, you're gross.
This second animation is based heavily on conversations I've had with my own 15-year-old daughter, and it has led to many amazing and open talks around everything sex and porn. When we give our kids the information they need to be empowered, then they're in a stronger position to make better choices for themselves.
Hello, daughter of mine. Hey, Dad. So, I want to have a talk to you about love, sex, and porn. Well, that's weird. Yep, it sure is, but it has to be done. Okay, then. I guess I want to start with mixtapes. Mixed what now? A mixtape. You see, 300 million years ago when I was a teen, before YouTube and Spotify, if you liked a girl, you'd make them a mixtape. We'd literally sit there for hours on end waiting for our favourite songs to come on the radio, and as soon as it did, we'd dive for that record button and hope the DJ didn't speak over the intro to it. It was a long and drawn out process of commitment and time, and the whole time we were sitting there dreaming about how much this girl we liked was really going to love it. Nowadays, it seems that if a guy likes a girl, she's very likely to just get a dick pic. Yeah, I know, it's gross, right? I tell you this because I want you to find a guy who will make you a mixtape, write you letters, and hold your hand. Oh, Dad, you're so cute. The world you're growing up in scares the shit out of me, love. I guess the whole dick pic thing is like a really good lead-in to the naked selfie thing. See, when guys send dick pics and girls send nudes and they're really young, not only is it illegal and you can be prosecuted for sharing child porn. Wait, what, really? Yeah, true fact. But we're pretty much saying to the person that we send it to, don't respect me, don't hold my hand, and don't make me a mixtape. Yeah, that makes sense. Everything we do in life becomes part of our story. The friends we have, the places we work, the people we kiss and fall in love with, and those we have sex with. The things we watch on TV or online influence our thinking and therefore are a part of what directs our story. If we watch, say, Love Island, for example, then we start to see the world as a shallow place of hookups and regrets. If we watch a romance film, then that can direct our thinking differently again. And when we watch online porn, then we start to think that women are just up for anything and everything a guy wants to do to her without even talking about it. And that most girls just love really rough, hard, degrading sex. Oh, that's gross. I know, right? But that's how our brains work. Whatever we watch on a regular basis, whatever we feed it, becomes what we perceive to be normal. So it's really important to make sure that what we're feeding our brains is in line with who we are and what we want our story to be. But Love Island is so funny and the guys are really hot. I understand, but those aren't mixtape stories. Those are dick pic ones. So back to the whole porn thing. Now we have filters at home and on your phone to protect you from as much as we can of what I can't even really call porn. It's just horrible, degrading shite. We do so because I don't want that to be part of your story. But, and here's the big but, one day when you do have sex, if the guy you are with hasn't had filters and has watched a lot of online degrading shite, then he's very likely gonna think that that's what sex is, and he may want to do that to you rather than making love. Dad, I would never let that happen to me. Yes, I understand. It's easy to say that now, but when you really like someone and trust them and your blood's running hot and you want to please them, stop! Dad, stop! Yuck! Sometimes we allow stuff to happen that crosses our boundaries and leaves us feeling a bit beaten up inside. And then on the flip side of that, if you had watched a lot of porn yourself, then maybe you'd expect him to do the hard, degrading stuff to you because that's normal, and then wondered why it hurt so much and you hated it. Dad, it's really weird talking about this stuff with you. Yep, it really is, eh? Here's the thing. When we have sex, it's a constant negotiation and communication, and porn never shows that. They're just ramming body parts as hard as they can, and they're also serious, whereas sex is fun. In real life, it's yes, no, and maybe. Yes, I like that. No, that's weirdly uncomfortable. Actually, I've lost the mood, let's stop. Hey, shall we try this? And sometimes it's really funny. There are these weird fart noises that happen when bodies rub together. Stop, or I will throw up. It's fumbling about and figuring out what works and what doesn't. And it can be one of the greatest experiences that life has to offer. And the great thing is that this is your life, and it's your body, and it's your story, and you get to decide how it all turns out. I just want you to have a great life, my love. And that includes great sex with someone who really cares for and respects you. Dad, I really appreciate you telling me this stuff, but I also feel a little weirded out, and I think I might actually throw up. So can we please stop now? Sure can. I love you. I love you too, Dad, you big weirdo. It's kind of normal these days to just let our kids sit down and watch YouTube. I mean, YouTube's safe, right? Well, yes and no. Here's PewDiePie, the world's biggest YouTuber with over 100 million subscribers, and kids love his stuff. He's fun, and he's built his career around playing video games, kids games, teen games, and violent porn games, where the players walk around assaulting young girls and ejaculating all over them. Logan and Jake Paul, brothers with around 20 million followers each, and once again, kids love them, but their content is for adults. These are known as influencers, but who are they influencing and with what content? There is hardly a kid in the Western world who hasn't either heard of or seen their stuff. But that's as bad as it gets, right? No.
A few quick searches and we found fully nude music videos, even one with millions of views where a woman explicitly pulls a microphone out of her vagina. And that's not even the worst of it. What we need to remember is that all of these online platforms, whether it be Instagram, TikTok, YouTube and the likes, are made up of content that random people have just filmed and put online. Educating ourselves and our kids and knowing what they're watching online are absolute musts. But the very first step needs to be filtering, a fence around the pool if you like. We've had tweens and teens protesting, "Don't you trust me?" But this is not a trust issue. This is a wear your seatbelt issue. And just like we don't let them sit in our car without first putting a seatbelt on, we also can't let them online without first having filters in place. The world of filters can be a daunting one, as there are so many to choose from. What we have learned is, number one, different filters are appropriate for different ages, and two, the older kids get, the more layers of protection they need. For little kids, I mean, as soon as they have a device that connects to the internet, they need a filter that will protect them from accidental exposure. We found a filter box from SafeSurfer that you pay a one-off fee for, plug it into the main modem, and then connect all the kids' devices to it. We use this in our home. It's simple and easy, even for a totally non-tech savvy family like ourselves. Adults can still connect via their main modem, just remember to change the password on it and keep it safely away from the kids. Disney do a similar filter box called Circle, and there are a number of different companies with software options which you can download. Online protection is all about layers, so on top of a filter we also need to add a monitoring app. Bark, who we featured earlier, seem to be at the top of their game in regards to monitoring what's happening on our kids' devices. This app is great, not just for keeping predators at bay, but it even picks up bullying, self-harm and depression. We have used Bark and it is truly awesome. What we haven't covered in this film so far is the use of VPNs and Tor. VPNs are virtual private networks, many of which are free to download and are used to stay anonymous online and bypass filters. Tor gives access to the dark web and is again just a free downloadable app that will take any user straight into the underbelly of the web. A lot of kids use VPNs to bypass school and home filters, so for teens, especially boys, Covenant Eyes is great.
It's like a flare gun.
Wait, what?
It automatically goes off, signaling that you need their help.
But unlike a flare gun, Covenant Eyes notifications are discreet and private.
Because what it does is takes a random screenshot of the device every minute or so, blurs it out for privacy, and then builds a profile as to what is being viewed. I love this idea, because if I were a teen and I knew my screens were being monitored in this way, I just wouldn't even bother looking for porn. One of the best websites we've come across for educating us as parents is Protect Young Eyes. Their site covers so much ground, from breaking down different social media apps and informing us of what to look out for, to protecting our kids on all the different types of devices they use, and then fully comprehensive tests and reviews on different filters and monitors, including which ones are best layered together for the absolute best protection online. I totally recommend jumping onto their website and checking them out.
Another thing we started doing was setting boundaries around playdates and sleepovers for our kids. Before our kids can do either, we check in with the parents to find out what filtering and rules they have in place around devices and internet usage. It felt really weird at first, but the reality is that we couldn't unlearn what we knew. And as parents, it's our responsibility to protect our kids, regardless of how uncomfortable that may feel. What was awesome is that once we explained about our work and the things we'd learned, other parents were really receptive to our request to have devices put elsewhere while the playdates took place. A lot of them, like us at the start, had no idea about all these dangers. We know a lot of parents that are now keeping devices out of bedrooms, in a communal area at mealtimes and while charging, so keeping them away from kids during playdates doesn't seem like such a large ask, and it gives the kids a chance to properly connect. We've even had parents ask for help setting up filtering and monitoring apps, which we've been really happy to do. After all, we don't want our friends' kids being a statistic, or one of Russ and Heidi's stories either.
One of the last things we want to address is the question, at what age should I give my kid a smartphone? I think the best answer is this. Here are two different phones. The new and updated Nokia 3310, yes, a totally revamped version of this old beauty with a new and updated Snake game to boot. And then this, the standard, I have enough power to actually launch a rocket to the moon smartphone. One of these you can give to your kid to keep them safe when they're away from the house and they can message and call their friends, not to mention spending hours trying to make sure the snake doesn't eat its own tail. The other one gives access to everything we've covered in this film. So for us personally as a family, it's been a matter of weighing up the benefits versus the risks. Yes, we want our kids to have a phone on them for when they go out. And yes, we want them to be able to contact their friends. And although social pressure these days seems to dictate that kids need to have smartphones, we're not buying into it. So our kids are those social rejects who walk around with a brick phone that takes 5 minutes to send a text, which is actually kind of fun to watch, and we know the phone is doing what we intended it to do, keeping them connected and keeping them safe.
Parents tell me this all the time. My kid's now 14, 15, 16. I wish I had started earlier. If I make changes now, it's going to be World War III. Yeah, you're probably right. But historically, World War I was worth fighting, and World War II was worth fighting, but they weren't fought as wars, they were fought as battles. One battle at a time.
So if you're not going to teach your kid about sex or about sexuality or about how to treat the opposite gender or a sexual partner, they will be educated on it. You just won't be in charge of it.
Please engage with this. Please listen, do your own research, realize that this is real.
It's on us as adults. We've created this, and we need to help fix it.
The road ahead, it twists and turns, and the sun beats down and it burns. But I keep on pushing through. And every step quicker than the last, my feet tread down this beaten path, and I keep on pushing through. 'Cause I get up, and I may fall right back down, but your love lifts me back to solid ground. Yeah, I get up, and I may fall right back down, but your love lifts me back to solid ground. And oh, I've come too far in this to raise my flag and call it quits. So I keep on pushing through. Oh, with every step my heart it pounds. Yes, so sure I've had my doubts, but I must keep pushing through. Yeah, I get up.